Yeah, the Panthers have Devin Lloyd, but I still think that linebacker should be a position the Panthers target early in the 2026 draft. Who are some of those prospects? We'll talk about a few of them right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, and let's break down some linebackers on today's show. Prior to free agency, I felt like at 19, linebacker was a position Carolina needed to address. But then they went out there and signed Devin Lloyd to a 3-year, $45 million contract with $25 million guaranteed. So they have their starting inside linebacker, and possibly Trevin Wallace could come back and start yet again. But I really think the Panthers, in what is considered a deep off-ball inside linebacker draft class, they should take one to come in at the very least to compete with Trevin, if not to supplant him as starter in 2026. And there are three guys I'm looking at and I want to discuss today. Jacob Rodriguez from Texas Tech, CJ Allen from Georgia, and Anthony Hill Jr. from Texas. We are joined by the host of Locked On Red Raiders, that is Casey Cowan, the host of Locked On Bulldogs covering Georgia, Clint Shamblin, and the host of Locked On Longhorns covering Texas, Brad Kellner, to break down Jacob Rodriguez, CJ Allen, and Anthony Hill Jr. And let's start off with the guy who came to Charlotte earlier this year to receive the Bronco Nagurski Trophy. That is Jacob Rodriguez. Let's talk about the linebacker prospect that y'all have asked me about the most, with someone who has actually covered and talked to this individual. We're talking about Jacob Rodriguez from Texas Tech University. The Red Raiders have a hell of a season last year. When you got the money, you spend it, and they spent it well on a lot of those players, including Jacob Rodriguez. However, to help us out with that is Casey Cowan of Locked On Texas Tech, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Casey, what's going on, man?
Man, just enjoying life out here in West Texas. Appreciate you having me on to talk about a guy that's fun to talk about. Yeah, Jacob Rodriguez became a Red Raider legend in what feels like a quick amount of time.
Absolutely. So, give people the background, because my understanding is that he was a quarterback elsewhere, transferred over to Tech, became a linebacker, and the next thing you know, he is one of the stars of that defense. Certainly, in my opinion, was not the best defensive player on that team. David Bailey, he owns that distinction, but was obviously the heart and soul what they had defensively at linebacker. Got some carries. There was the Heisman campaign they were trying to run for him last year down in Lubbock. Just take people through just the background of how he got there and how he became a Texas Tech legend.
Yes, sir. When he arrived from Virginia as a transfer a few years back as an offensive guy, primarily a quarterback. I think he may have caught a pass or even been a ball carrier here or there for the Cavaliers. But, yeah, winds up transferring to the Red Raiders and had only spent time, I believe, on the college level as an offensive player, but is a linebacker for Texas Tech, I believe, from the very beginning of his time in West Texas, but doesn't really get off to all that quick of a start because he has an injury almost right out of the gates and misses the majority of that first year. We do see him, I think, that year at the very end in, I believe, a bowl game against Cal where he shows out, and you notice that Jacob Rodriguez is back on the field. If I remember correctly, I believe he was forcing a fumble on the play. He actually got injured there so early on, which, of course, became a staple of his. We would find out over time. But whenever he did get healthy and did get back in the mix for Texas Tech, he really took off in a way, I got to say, I didn't anticipate, and maybe I was just unaware of what he was capable of. Knew the story about the intangible part of what he brings to the table, which is as good as it gets. Knew he was a fantastic teammate, could make a great leader if he could be that guy on the field that is sort of worth following. But I can't tell you that I was seeing All-American or all-time Red Raider in his future whenever he began. But, some things changed. And obviously in this most recent season, as you mentioned, you get to surrounding him with some top-shelf talent, which really just produces a different big picture overall. But I think Jacob Rodriguez really found a spot in which he was comfortable and he was invested in by Shill Wood, his defensive coordinator. And I think that you also see a guy that really matured in his time as a Red Raider, probably a different person by the end of it than he was when he showed up. I think he got married during that time. I don't think he was married when he got here. A lot of people became very familiar with his wife's story because she's a Black Hawk helicopter pilot, which is not just an everyday thing that comes across our radar. So they were really embraced by the community for all of those intangible sort of reasons. But man, then the football couldn't be ignored. And all of a sudden you're finding a guy that really, I think from an instinctive standpoint, was about as good as it gets whenever it comes to some natural recognition ability and just on the field instincts. And I kind of wonder, and we've talked about this on our own show on Locked On Texas Tech several times, if maybe some of that offensive background kind of helped him with some of that stuff, or just the feel for what he was seeing across the line of scrimmage and spending time specifically as a quarterback, maybe kind of lended itself to that as well. But yeah, just became an incredible team leader. He has all the accolades from an individual standpoint, but I think a lot of Red Raiders really happy that he was able to be a part of a historic season for the team, because he is an ultimate team guy. And we can kind of get to what has happened more recently, but you knew he was going to check a lot of those intangible boxes. I think he went to the combine and maybe checked some of those boxes from an athleticism standpoint as well that some might have had some questions about. But I can't wait to see what his professional future is going to hold.
Yeah, and that's the thing, that testing oftentimes can really separate a prospect. And like the on-field work, the tape should matter the most. And I do think it matters most. We do oftentimes see guys who were not that productive in college go through the combine and go through the pro days and like, oh, hey, maybe this guy should go in the first round. And then you get him, oh, maybe this guy's actually not a first-round pick because he didn't really produce back at the college level. There's no argument about that with Jacob Rodriguez. Dan Morgan, the Panthers, president of football operations, general manager, was there in Lubbock a couple weeks ago for his pro day. So he clearly has his eyes on Rodriguez. And like looking at him more, you talk about the instincts. I'm curious, coverage-wise, because that's going to be a big thing at this level. How good of a coverage linebacker do you see him in today's NFL?
I do think that was probably on the cons list of where he's got to be able to improve. And some of the identification was there, but I think there was also, just based on conversations that I've had, some tendency to kind of maybe bite on some play action stuff and some RPO stuff. And there were some busted coverages, I know, just remembering some of the games that were sort of costly for Texas Tech. And it's kind of hard to know from our perspective in game, maybe where that busted coverage or what it's actually rooted in. I'm not grading it out on Sundays with them there in the film room necessarily, but yeah. I think that from a pass coverage standpoint, he's athletic enough to do it. But I do think that there's also, of course, some things that Texas Tech was asking of him nearer to the line of scrimmage that maybe didn't force him to really acclimate or grow in a pass coverage kind of way, the way he did in some other areas. So I'm not quite sure if, he arrives there as a well-rounded product by any means, but I think he's got the athleticism. And I know that he, again, has got the recognition ability, and going on between the years, the ability, I think, to be really, really crafty and really clever. Because while I say some of that's more so kind of on the downside, he was a guy that just constantly was winding up in a spot where the quarterback was not aware that he was there. And all of a sudden it's a turnover, it's a takeaway, it's going the other way. So that's kind of why I throw in the word crafty, because he's a very clever football player. And so it certainly wasn't perfect. And I think if you're looking at some things to pick apart, you could go to that area, but look out, because he's a playmaker. And all of a sudden he's going to wind up probably making a play. And sometimes these are game-changing plays, obviously, when we talk about the turnover margin.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone describe a player like a linebacker as crafty. Typically, if we're calling an athlete crafty, it's like in basketball. So that's interesting to hear you use that word to describe him. And I do think there probably is a benefit, as you mentioned, to him playing quarterback, having to read a defense. And you could argue, as an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, you should understand how to call an offense just as well as you have to call a defense if you're going to be a coordinator at that level and be at the highest level possible. So argument as a linebacker, you should be able to read an offense as good as you'd be able to read a defense, vice versa. So we'll see how that plays out. And I do also believe that's probably beneficial that he play with NFL talent like a David Bailey, like a Romello Height last year. And while people might say, oh, well, that's when he really got to play well, is because he had those guys around. It's like, well, now you're getting to see what he may look like on Sundays with those type of talents around him. So looking at it, getting to Sundays, look, I've seen it all over the board, man. I've seen him being maybe a first-round pick. I don't know. 19 seems kind of high to take him. I don't think he's going to be there at 51. Where do you think he belongs in this draft class when you evaluate Jacob Rodriguez?
I think second round, top half of the second round is probably where most likely the word belongs is appropriate. But who's got the appetite at the end of the first? I wouldn't be surprised if maybe somebody feels like this is a guy I want to add to the locker room. Like I do, it's all about need whenever these picks come up. And who's got what kind of eyes and how they're interpreting things. I think top of the second round, first half of the second round is definitely the right type of range for Jacob Rodriguez. And really when just going back to the crafty thing, he's just a very clever guy. And so, I mean, not just in pass coverage, but his ability, I was always impressed with his ability to kind of navigate blocks and navigate some traffic and kind of go through thin and come out wide. So that's sort of what I referenced there. And that's more of an all-encompassing kind of thing. And tell me who doesn't want that on their roster. So if there's a need there, you could maybe see him at the end of the first round. But I really feel like if his name is not called in the second round, I'm going to be shocked at this point in time. And I don't know that I would have said that coming into this process following the season. I think he's done himself a lot of good during the draft lead up. I know he's acing probably every interview he's sitting in. The meeting room, like across the desk, not going to be any kind of question. But I think he's made himself probably some money during this process. And now I'm telling myself he's at least a no doubt second rounder.
Yeah, and he is also the most recent winner of the Bronco Nagurski Trophy that is awarded here in Charlotte, North Carolina. So he's been to Charlotte. He's gotten, I don't know how much he got a tour around the city. So maybe that's just a pretender to him coming to Carolina here in a couple of weeks' time as the draft is corner. But Jacob Rodriguez, a lot of people ask me about him, Casey, and a lot of people want to see him potentially be a Carolina Panther. Dan Morgan's got his eyes on him. We'll see if that works out. But again, Casey Cowan, one of the hosts of Locked On Texas Tech, does a great job here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Check him out over on YouTube and wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. We'll take a quick pause and we'll head over to the SEC and break down a Georgia Bulldog and CJ Allen, a guy who a couple weeks ago, if you asked me who the Panthers should take at 19, I would have said him. We'll talk to Clint Shamblin of Locked On Bulldogs here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Financial stress is something a lot of people are carrying right now, and it's not just about numbers. It can affect your sleep, your relationships, and your overall mental health in ways that build up over time. And the reality is, struggling with money doesn't mean you failed. Sometimes it just means you haven't had the right kind of support. It's something I've thought about, how easy it is to put pressure on yourself financially without really talking about it. Therapy isn't about financial advice. It's about working through the stress, the anxiety, and the emotions that come with it. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 6 million people served, BetterHelp makes it easier to get matched and start focusing on what you need. When life feels overwhelming, therapy can help. Sign up at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp.com/lockedon. Continuing our conversation by looking at positions of need, linebacker is the focus today, and Georgia's CJ Allen is who I want to discuss right now. Clint Shamblin, one of those of Locked On Bulldogs, covering the Georgia Bulldogs. Clint, before free agency began, when people were asking me, what should the Panthers do at 19? I was saying inside linebacker or edge was my 1A, 1B, but really my heart was on linebacker and getting a guy like CJ Allen, getting a dog, both a Georgia Bulldog, but also a dog at that position. That's what Panthers general manager Dan Morgan, who was a dog and played linebacker for Carolina and at a high level in this league, he said that he wanted those kind of guys when he took over the job. And quite frankly, they haven't had those kind of guys, that inside linebacker, his first 2 seasons as general manager. CJ Allen is who I wanted. And looking at it now that Devin Lloyd's here, they don't necessarily have a major need at inside linebacker, but if that board says to them that the top player on their board at 19th overall is CJ Allen, I'm going to be celebrating because I think that guy is tremendous. When you watch him out there on tape, what jumps out at you? What's his calling card?
My Roquan Smith is my favorite Bulldog of all time, and it's not. I love, like, linebackers is my bread and butter. By the way, just Mr. Canales, Coach Canales. By the way, I played with him in college, so I know a little bit. I have a little heart for Panthers, so I follow you guys more than I do NFL because of that. And I love inside linebacker. I played inside linebacker. It's my bread and butter. CJ Allen is one of the better linebackers to come out of college in the last 3 years. And I know who's come out. And I know if there's not a need for it, this is a dude you just say, the skill demands we take him, because he was everything to Georgia this last year. Our defense got better. We went from one of the worst rush defenses in the entire SEC 2 years ago to last year being one of the better rush defenses in the SEC. And it had a ton to do with CJ Allen. Our defensive line room, insanely young. We had two true freshman guys starting. We had outside edge guys that we lost in the portal, had to bring in some other transfer portals, trying to make it work. One of our better guys, Jordan Hall, goes down with an injury, and it was up to CJ Allen to get that defense right. And the rush defense was one of the best in the SEC, primarily because of him. He is an everywhere guy. His biggest question coming into the year was pass coverage. 2 years ago, I got to admit, off season, I was really nervous. I said that Raylan Wilson was going to be a better linebacker than CJ Allen because of pass coverage. Go watch film. He will cover anybody, any down, any place. Wheel routes, out routes, seams, tight ends, wide receiver, it doesn't matter. He had pass breakups that were incredible all year long. He baited a couple guys in some interceptions that I thought was masterful and artful. So he's an every down linebacker. He's a plug and play. I cannot be more excited for CJ Allen. He might be my second favorite inside linebacker to come out of Georgia after Roquan Smith. I just think the world of him. And I know who Nakobe Dean, I know who they are. Y'all, he is a beast. He brings violence at the point of attack. He doesn't get beat in blocks. He has speed. Don't listen to the junk from guys that watched his pro day and said don't listen. Go watch film. He's recovering from surgery is what happened this offseason. Go watch film. He ran with anybody and everybody in the SEC, and it didn't matter who he lined up against. He beat them. I love CJ Allen.
Roquan Smith is one of those guys that brings you to tears when you watch him play. And back in 2017, that second year where Kirby was at Georgia and they went to the national title game, we need to talk about what happened at the end. That run, the linebackers were really the leaders of that team. It was Roquan, it was Devin Bellamy, it was both the Walkers, right? I mean, not related, but I mean it was incredible to watch them play. So when you say Roquan Smith, I start to sweat because it's like my God. Wait, hold on. So did you bury the league? Is this the fourth time I've had you on? You played at Azusa Pacific with
I did with Canales.
So you're a Cougar too?
I'm a Cougar as well, absolutely.
We're gonna have to get you back on and get some Dave Canales stories if you got any.
Oh, I got him, baby.
Oh, okay.
By the way, I love the guy. Just so you fully know, I love him. He's great.
That's awesome. So yeah, we're gonna bookmark that. Maybe I'll get you on in like May or June when there's some quiet time. We'll definitely have a conversation about that. That's so cool to hear. So you answered another question already about coverage. Like that was a huge issue for Carolina last year when they had Christian Roseboom. Even Trevin Wallace have had some struggles there. They've moved on from Roseboom. He's now a Buck. Devin Lloyd, no issues there. So good to hear with CJ Allen. That's also not going to be a problem. Now, again, young player coming to the league. There's going to be some hiccups. What's the area that you think he really needs to improve upon?
I saw this 2 years ago. He got lost in his first step quite a bit. And if you wanted to misdirect CJ Allen, you just use misdirection in the run game. His keys are so good. It was actually really wild. This last year at Georgia, Glenn Schumann, Kirby Smart allowed him to call a lot of the defense. So he is insanely smart. Straight up, they asked Glenn Schumann directly, hey, play calling. And he said, actually, most of the time we just gave it to CJ. And CJ, we had coverages that we would call, and the DBs, you could see it in film. DBs would look over and get the over coverage from the coaches, but the under coverage as well as the alignment was a lot of CJ lining everybody up and telling them where to go. And so he's incredibly smart. He's incredibly commanding. He's incredibly intuitive of what the offense is going to do. It's weird. It's almost to a fault. He's so intuitive, and he's overthinking himself. And first step, he would get lost a couple times and then get in the wash. So if guards were pulling, he'd read his keys, he'd follow his keys, he'd get caught in the wash, and the play would go elsewhere. That's where he needs to get better at it, is actually kind of the maturity of an inside linebacker. At backer, you just have to know sometimes it hits you like my keys are lying to me. I have to go with what I'm not. I sense it. And I know that doesn't make any sense, but you play football, you get it. There's this.
Yeah, you get the instincts. Yeah,
you get the instincts. That's where he has to improve. And I think he got better this last year. I saw him do that quite a bit. That's why I said baiting quarterbacks into interceptions was something he did a handful of times. Breaking on the ball, coming downhill was really good. Pass coverage is not an issue. He's not going to be elite at that. He's not going to be top 5 in the league in pass coverage. He's a B at that, which if you're a linebacker that can play every single down, B to B plus is just fine.
Don't be a liability. That's what you're asking.
That's what, and he's not a liability in the pass game 1,000%. So that would be a one hole. And the second hole is, learning the maturity of an inside backer. But I've seen it happen every single time. Nakobe Dean had the same knock on him in the Eagles. Turns out he was just fine. And now he's going to be just fine for the Raiders. Channing Tindall, same thing. Roquan Smith, even early on, had a little bit of that, and just learn it through the system. And that's the same here with CJ.
And you would know better, having played a position back in college. I'm guessing for the most part, they want you to go out there, keep things simple, and just fly around and let your natural talent, athleticism, and the instincts and experience playing football take over. And then once you're in the league as a professional, not having to go to class, you have more time for football to be your class and to really look at the film. And like I think back, and it's never fair to compare it. And I'm not trying to do that, but Luke Kuechly was a guy who instinctually had it all. He's a Hall of Famer for a reason, but also that was a guy who was in there, right, with Cam Newton, first man in, last man out, watching film all day long, knowing what the opponent was doing. So when you have the instincts, you have the God-given ability and talent like Kuechly has, and you study, it takes over. And that apparently is what's been able to happen for guys who come from Georgia, like Dean up in Philadelphia recently, also with Roquan Smith. So maybe CJ Allen next in line for that to be the case. Now, looking at him coming in as a rookie, I do think if he comes to Carolina, especially if they take him 19, because Dave Canales said this at the NFL owners meetings that they're not taking a guy at 19 if they're not going to come in and really be an impact player. They're not going out just to get depth there. So if he gets drafted by the Panthers 19th overall, my expectation is he's going to be right there with Devin Lloyd. And it may be a good thing, too, that you said that Glenn Schumann, the DC down in Georgia, allowed him to call some of the coverages and the plays, because Devin Lloyd was really good last year not wearing the green dot. So they could get a green dot as a rookie. I don't know if they want to put that on him. That would be outstanding. So really just overall, your expectations about what he could be as a rookie and in the future once he gets to the league.
Whatever team he goes on, he's going to start day one. You talk about a green dot guy. That is who he was at Georgia. That's who he's going to be in the league. And he can do it all. He can blitz, he can pass coverage, he can run downhill, tackle, get off blocks. It doesn't matter. This guy is an every down linebacker, green dot leader type dude he is tenacious when it comes to sucking up football knowledge. He was all the time well-articulated guy who just loves balling. And so, yes, if the Panthers draft him and say, well, you're going to be 1B to somebody else, instead of saying, hey, no, we're actually going to let our other linebackers fly around. You're going to be the guy that comes over and takes over and sets it. It's going to only help everybody else. CJ Allen raises the bar of everybody on the defense. That's what happened last year. Completely inexperienced, completely loss of talent on the defensive line. And they, again, from last to one of the top 3 in the SEC in rush defense, and it largely because of him. He's a leader. He's a green dot. I anticipate him to start early, start often, and have an 8 to 10 year career in the league where he's on a defense that only gets better each year.
And this is an organization that's all about linebackers as far as that defense goes. I mean, there's been guys like Kuechly, he's going to the Hall of Fame. Seb Mills has a statue, keep pounding it. That's him. He's a Hall of Famer as well. Thomas Davis, a former Dog as well, was fantastic. And I just think back, could you get a combo like with Luke and TD, with Devin Lloyd and CJ Allen? Like, that's the kind of stuff that would get a lot of people excited here in Charlotte. But, man, great stuff, as always, from Clint Shamblin, one of the hosts of Locked On Bulldogs, covering Georgia. Follow him over on socials at Dogs Podcast. That's Dogs, DAWGS. I shouldn't even have to tell you. You should know how you're going to spell dogs when you're talking about Georgia. But great stuff they do over there. Check them out on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. We'll take a quick pause here, come back, and again, stay in the SEC. We're going down to Texas, to 40 acres, talk about some guy I really like, an Anthony Hill Jr. Could he fit in Carolina next to Devin Lloyd, rather, or maybe CJ Allen? We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Let's talk about one more linebacker prospect here on Locked On Panthers. We already talked about Jacob Rodriguez from the state of Texas, CJ Allen from the SEC. Let's stay in the state of Texas and also in the SEC and talk about Anthony Hill Jr. from the University of Texas there on the 40 acres. And to help us do that is Brad Kellner of Locked On Longhorns. Talked to him last year. Glad to talk to him again. Brad, how's it going, my friend?
Going great, Julian. Good to see you again. Good to talk to you again. And that means the NFL draft is right around the corner. So for any football fan, I think that's a great thing.
It is. And I feel bad because, anytime I talk to the college guys, it's when the draft's coming around. And, I would love to talk to you during the regular season, but it's not really necessary because we got our own seasons going on. But always nice to catch up with y'all at this time of the year. I'll tell you this. Anthony Hill Jr. is a guy I was really excited to see play this past year at Texas. I thought that he had the potential to be a first-round guy. For whatever reason, he's now behind, it seems like, guys like Jacob Rodriguez, maybe CJ Allen. He certainly is not up there like Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles from Ohio State. But I still think this is a guy who can be a dude at the next level. When you look at him, what jumps out on tape?
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I mean, I think it's mystifying and borderline shocking that Anthony Hill is not being projected as a first rounder right now. Now, there are some mock drafts out there that have him going in the back end of the first round, somewhere in the 25 to 32 range, but the majority of mocks that are coming out have him going early on day 2. And I'll just say this right off the bat, Julian, if your Panthers are able to get Anthony Hill on day 2 of the draft, that is a steal. I mean, if he's on the board, that's you run the card up kind of pick. This guy is a hell of a player. I think part of the reason why he's falling as far as he is on those mock drafts is because of how good of a linebacker class that it is. This is a good year to be in the market for a linebacker coming out of college because there are some great ones taking their talents to the NFL. But I think Anthony Hill is going to have a fantastic career at the next level. He's an unbelievable athlete. Kind of saw that at the combine with him running a 4.51 at just shy of 240 pounds and 6'2" tall. And the guy just made plays for all 3 years he was at Texas. I go back, his first season in 2023, he was playing edge more so than off-ball linebacker. In the second game of his college career, Texas played at Alabama, Nick Saban's final year with the Crimson Tide, and Anthony Hill was coming off the edge and also playing quarterback spy on Jalen Milroe in that game. He had 2 sacks. He was all over the field. Like Nick Saban in Alabama, that was a Bama team that made the playoff. They could not stop Anthony Hill in his second career college game. Second team All-SEC in each of the last 2 years. Second team AP All-American in each of the last 2 years. He's been very productive, and he's a guy that I think you can line up at a couple of different spots on a defense, and he's going to make plays. So, yeah, I'm willing to admit that I'm biased, Julian, but I think this guy is a heck of a player who's going to have a very, very long NFL career.
I mean, when you broke it down there, he's out there, second game of his career in Tuscaloosa at Bryant-Denny Stadium, making huge plays in what was, at least at that point in time, the defining win of the Sark era at Texas. And he's a freshman, and he's played the last 2 years as an all-SEC performer, as that off-ball inside linebacker, has the ability to be able to play edge as well, has the athleticism. You see how he's testing off the charts there at the combine. And, like, how is he not a guy who's projected to be in the first round? So maybe I'm biased too, because I just love watching the guy play. And I'm always a big fan of guys who are 3 and done, because that tells you they lived up, because you're not at Texas starting day 1 or playing a lot day 1 if you weren't a highly touted guy. And then the fact that you actually lived up to the recruiting rankings, whether they matter or not in this era of college football, I thought he was outstanding. Now, when you look at him, a big thing is going to be coverage in the league at this point in time. How good is he as a coverage linebacker?
I think he's very good at that. I wouldn't say great. I wouldn't say elite. But again, 4.51, 40-yard dash time. The guy's quick. He's very athletic. He's got some twitch to his game too. So is he the best cover linebacker in this class? No. But he had 3 interceptions over his 3-year college career. He can make plays on the ball. He's a good enough athlete to where if he's around the ball, he's going to find a way to get it. So, yeah, I think he's good enough in that to be a 3-down linebacker at the next level. Again, there are guys who are better than that than he is, but I wouldn't describe that as a weakness to his game. I don't think that's a big concern for me as he takes his game to the next level. I think he's good enough in space. Against the quickest receivers in the game, no. But against tight ends and certain receivers and backs coming out of the backfield, I think Ant Hill can more than hold his own. Like you said, I mean, he's been an all-SEC performer the last couple of years. He's played in playoff games. He's gone up against a bunch of guys who are currently in the NFL during his college career and more than held his own. So I think he'll be just fine in that department.
Yeah, I wouldn't be all that concerned either. Obviously, the kind of athlete who can handle it. I think it just comes down to coaching. And look, the offense is set up to win a lot of times in those situations, especially going up against backs when you're a linebacker in coverage, and tight ends as well. That was an issue for Carolina a season ago. I'm looking at him too. When you look at it, we talked a lot about how it seems like he's kind of underrated at this point in time. It is a deep linebacker class. I have to guess there's got to be a little bit more to it to why he's now being projected by a lot to be a second-round pick. So where are the weaknesses? What does he need to clean up a bit once he gets to the next level?
Yeah, I think 3 reasons, Julian, why his stock maybe fell compared to what people thought it was going to be going into his last year of college football. In 2024, he had 113 tackles and 16 and a half TFLs. in 2025, 69 tackles, 7 TFLs. Missed a couple of games with a broken hand. A lot of other guys on this Texas defense. But look, the Longhorns as a team were not as good. The defensive coordinator got fired after 2025. Texas went from back-to-back trips to the college football playoff semifinal to missing the CFP altogether. So the Longhorns weren't on the national scale as much. He didn't put up the same numbers that he put up. Talked about this loaded draft class. And then again, off-ball linebacker is not a premium position. Part of me wonders if Anthony Hill stayed on the edge for all 3 years of his college career, what would his numbers have been? Where would he be drafted? How would we be talking about him? He made out just fine as a linebacker, but I think those 3 things are kind of working against him a little bit. He can get better in a lot of areas. I do think his coverage, especially zone coverage, can get better. Sometimes he carries routes longer than he needs to be. I think he had some missed tackle problems. Sometimes he comes in too high on tackle attempts, which can get him in trouble. But Julian, I think he's very safe. He's very instinctive. He's got an incredibly high football IQ. He can diagnose plays. I think it was Lance Zierlein of NFL.com compare him to Bobby Wagner. I don't think he's got the ceiling of Bobby Wagner, but that's a respected guy who's covered a lot of football who made that player comp. That's not a Texas fan doing that. So I don't know if he's that good, but I think he's very safe. He does everything well. He's very good in some areas. He might not be the most elite of elite. I'm not trying to sell anybody a fake bill of goods that he's Arvell Reese or Sonny Styles or some of these other guys, but he does so many things right. I don't think there's an obvious weakness to his game. And again, that's why I'm very confident in saying he's going to have a lengthy career in the National Football League.
Yeah, I had to fact check you on that, and you are 100% correct. Lance Zierlein of NFL Network does have his comparison as Bobby Wagner, and this is a coaching staff in Carolina. A lot of them came to Seattle and coached Bobby Wagner, so they can get one. And a guy in Anthony Hill Jr. who could be there at 51. I've seen, looking at the consensus mock board, he's been back in the 50. That's not saying where he's going to go. I think he could go earlier. Now, Panthers don't have to be aggressive in getting a linebackers. There's plenty that could fall right to him. That's a guy I look at that would make a lot of sense. Now, lastly here, he's going to get drafted likely on day 2, probably in the second round. Do you look at him as a clear plug-and-play starter, or is he someone who's going to need maybe a little bit of seasoning once he gets to the next level?
I think he's a plug-and-play starter. I think within 2 or 3 years, he's going to be a very good player in this league too. So I guess it depends on whatever team drafts him, what their linebacker room looks like. If you're in a situation where you've got a couple of linebackers maybe going into their final year of their contracts and you're thinking we can let them walk after 2026 because we've got Ant Hill waiting in the wings, that could work too. But you typically, when you draft a guy in the top 51, you're expecting him to be a day 1 guy. And there's no reason why Anthony Hill can't be a day 1 starter wherever he ends up, especially on a team as good as Carolina.
Yeah, and you look at his prospect grade, it has him as become a good starter within 2 years. So, and you're right. Carolina's taking him at 51, or if they move up early to go get him, if somehow he starts jumping off boards and he's going to be there at 19 as a guy we're taking, then he's coming in to start day 1 next to Devin Lloyd, who they just signed to a massive contract this offseason a couple weeks ago. So yeah, a fun prospect and a guy that I think would make a lot of sense for Carolina. But Brad Kellner does a great job, as you just heard, covering the Longhorns on Locked On Longhorns. A lot going on. They got spring ball going on, big season for Sark Arch Manning. I know a lot of y'all want to be like, oh, Arch Manning's not all that good. Yeah, he's pretty good, guys. So check out the season coming up in the Longhorns baseball. Number 2 in the country, according to D1Baseball.com. The Horns are always there in Omaha, it seems like. So I'm sure he's going to be breaking that down as well. Brad, appreciate you jumping on the show today.
Always a pleasure, Julian. Thanks, man.
Great stuff there from Brad Kellner of Locked On Longhorns. Always great to talk about the Texas Longhorns with him and talk about Anthony Hill Jr., who, man, I love that guy. And I also love CJ Allen. I just think Allen, Rodriguez, Hill, Jake Golday, Josiah Tucker, there's a ton of linebackers the Panthers could take on day 2 of the draft. And I do think that a lot of these guys are going to be right there in position for Carolina. Either sit at 51, maybe move up to go get their guy. I do think they need a linebacker, and I would be fine with any of the 3 we talked about today and a number of the other ones that we did not discuss, at least on today's show or on any show so far. Maybe there'll be a prospect of the day moving ahead towards the draft here and only a couple a week's time. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all, subscribe or follow the show free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and over on Blue Sky at Julian Council, where I am back with y'all on Friday, answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions, either at me or DM me to get those questions into me right now. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. And I'm back with y'all later today on Tuesday with yet another prospect of the day. Stay tuned to figure out who that will be here on Locked On Panthers.